Week 7 has been beautifully weird, Liz Loza.
It's been awesome. What are you talking about?
I've enjoyed
One more week until the halfway point.
What, are you looking forward to this being over?
A little bit.
But football is so wonderful.
I'm looking forward to football not being... Football doesn't end until February.
That's a great point. And we get to, dump some of these Garbo teams out of... Like, we spent our entire first halftime stream talking about the damn Giants and the damn Bills and the damn Dolphins. I mean, the Bills, credit to them. They're a good team. But, at the same time, I don't know that we need to be sitting here breaking down the Dolphins and the Giants.
Well, there are fantasy implications everywhere, Matt. That's why people play fantasy.
Exactly, and that is why
we
are here. And look, our first problem, we already have somebody that has a problem.
Oh, I'm
Liz,
sorry.
and I'm going to say Liz and Harmon. I'll take this one too, because I threw Jimmy Graham so far under the bus on FFL today. And look, I stand by what I said. I think if I had 2 healthy knees, which I don't, I think I could beat Jimmy Graham in a foot race right now.
I mean, I'm not trying to race Jimmy Graham, but when I watched his performance and he lost a couple of touchdowns, and you think about Aaron Rodgers putting various receivers in the doghouse and all these dang Lazard questions, and Dawson Knox was on the up, but you know what? I apologize. I'm assuming you apologize. Nope, no. Maybe Matt's not sorry. I am sorry.
I'm not sorry. I don't care.
I should have checked my tarot deck a little bit better, and I look forward to disappointing you again next week.
Next time, here's something I want to hit on. Barry from the chat room. No, excuse me, not you, Barry. Sorry. James Jones from the chat room, not the Packers receiver, I'm assuming. But they're pissed off about their receivers this week. They started Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, and DJ Chark. And I want to ask you this, Liz.
Oh.
2 Rams receivers in this fella's lineup. Are the Rams back, or was this just a product of playing the Falcons?
The Falcons.
37-10. Obviously, Jared Goff. He shook someone out of their shoes today. Deion Jones. I think you got to retire, bro. Like, that's just the rules. You got shook out by Jared Goff at the goal line. That's not what you want to see. Overall, 59% completion rate for Goff.
Also, are we excited because one Rams receiver hit 80 yards? He didn't even go over 80 yards, and that was the best. The best that Robert Woods could do was 80 yards. Brandon Cooks had like 50-ish. Cooper Kupp had around 50-ish. Like, that's not #goals for a team that went to the Super Bowl last year and was one of the most prolific passing offenses in the league last year. And especially against this defense, what we should be excited about is Todd Gurley's return.
Yeah, Gurley scored a receiving touchdown. It was on his lone target of the day. It was a great-looking catch.
Yep.
If they don't want to run Gurley into the ground with all the injuries, I think using him as a receiver is a nice compliment to do that. Also worth noting that the other player to score a touchdown through the air was Gerald Everett, who had 10 targets. That was a team high. He looks like he is a fixture in this
It's happening week after week, which just means next week when we recommend him over Jimmy Graham, for example, he will probably disappoint.
And I still won't feel bad about it. I asked people before we jumped on here what they were tilting about, and there's quite a few people. Not everybody said Kerryon, or not everyone said David Johnson. A few people were upset about Kerryon Johnson. I'll pull this tweet up right now. Tevin Coleman can't get a touchdown against Washington. I mean, whatever. They win the game. But Kerryon Johnson also gets hurt too. Kind of a big injury here in fantasy.
It's certainly a big injury, but I also feel like, let's talk about the San Francisco game first, because I think the weather factored into this game much more, and I'll admit it, than I believed it would or should, but it was pouring rain. I mean, can we really, blame this score on that?
No.
I mean, or can we really not believe that the weather affected this score, I should say?
I mean, it's especially through the air. You just would think, it turned into a total slop fest.
Right. Everyone's slipping everywhere.
Yeah, I was sitting.
In fact, the 49ers were celebrating while they were sliding. I mean,
I was sitting next to our great Yahoo Fantasy social editor, Trevor, and he noted these Niners jerseys look rough. Like, you can't even tell that they used to be white when they started this game, because that's how much we were just in the muck and the mire.
I do think the Dante Pettis performance was disappointing, especially since he had been trending upward. And maybe he isn't the team's wide receiver one. I do think the weather did factor in, but also the thing that we know about the 49ers, and we're going to keep guessing at receiver, is that the run is the focal point and the featured part of this game. You had a great stat during FFL. Why don't you share it with the people?
Which one was it?
The most rushing. Something about rushing.
Yeah, there's a lot of rushing. I don't know. Which one was it? Who cares? Anyways.
Most rushing. Lots of rushing in San Francisco. He had a stat. He doesn't remember it, and I clearly wasn't listening carefully enough to find the nuance in it, but it's still, regardless, the takeaway from this game is that the D-line is amazing, and from an offensive point of view, the run game is where it's at.
Boom, there we go. I want to turn our attention to Shane, who sent me this tweet of just a sheep wrecking someone's backyard, and brings up two players, and I think this is worth talking about, right? You know, this is sort of a process over results claim that we'll make here, but Kenny Golladay, Phillip Lindsay, both get banged in this one. Nothing really happens for those two, but their teammates, you know, that was where it happened, right? Like Marvin Jones scores a ton of touchdowns. Royce Freeman scored the early touchdown for Denver until Joe Flacco started to really make up for the loss of Patrick Mahomes on Thursday Night Football. So, like, the reason that people wanted to play Kenny Golladay, the reason people wanted to play Phillip Lindsay, those things came true. It just happened to come through for their teammates, which is, you know, it's a bummer for you, but at the end of the day, you know what the two, like, those are still the two lead assets in those two pass-catching corps. It's just things happen, you know? That's the way it goes.
Absolutely. If we're going to stay on Detroit, because we mentioned Kerryon Johnson, should we talk about Ty Johnson a little bit right now?
Yeah, let's talk a little Ty Johnson action.
He did lead the backfield with 10 carries. Nothing particularly amazing, but let's not forget the opponent is the Minnesota Vikings, real staunch run defense. If Kerryon Johnson is going to miss some real time, then I think Ty Johnson is the early downs/goal line back in this offense. We know that they want to be run heavy. J.D. McKissick, scat back, receiving running back. So you can imagine him happening on like third downs and stuff like that. So Ty Johnson's very not owned at all in most leagues. And
yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bigger back too. He's over 210 pounds. You know, he's the guy that you'd think would get those looks.
Right. Went to Maryland. 6th round pick, rookie.
Over 4,000 all-purpose yards. Also graduated Maryland. Shout out to college graduate Ty Johnson.
Isn't that the third most in college history, Matt?
Third most in school history. Actually, it might third most. I don't know. I had another stat there that I don't remember. But you know, there's a lot of numbers.
Ty Johnson. If you are desperate for a running back and Kerryon Johnson is out, keep an eye on him. I'm sure we'll talk about him as waivers start to become more clear as the week progresses.
The Wolves out there will be on the waiver.
I will never do that.
I will do it all the time. All right, another thing we want to hit from the chat. Amy from Facebook says she's disappointed in Singletary, Gore, and Allen. They all should have balled out. Look, the backfield, tough. Like that was a little brutal. I think we need to see the snap counts in terms of which guys played more. I'll pull up the box score from that game.
Frank Gore had 11 carries in that one. 55 yards. That's still a YBC of 5. You know, we had one long run of 15 yards. Devin Singletary is a player who has struggled with hamstring injuries, so we're not sure, since that's a soft tissue issue, exactly how healthy he is and exactly how much the Bills want to commit to him, since I think that Sean McDermott believes that this Bills squad is a postseason contender, so maybe they want to save their spry, isn't his nickname Motor?
Singletary?
Yeah, or that's Henderson.
Yeah. I think so.
So maybe they want to save the spry guy for a little bit longer, you know, let him get a couple of reps, ease back in so that the hamstring issue isn't tweaked.
We also don't really have a totally great idea in terms of what they want out of him just in general, because remember in week 1, he played all those snaps, had a high yards per carry average, but didn't get a ton of work. And then in this game, as you said, Gore has more touches. We also have no catches in the passing game for Singletary, but 1 for Frank Gore.
And they were down after the first half, so they had to move to the pass more in the second half.
Exactly. And to be fair, for the Josh Allen complaint, you know, he 202 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns. It's a fine outing. He has 32 yards on the ground, which again is okay. But John Brown, legit number 1 receiver, 83 yards a touchdown on this game. He has a 35% share of the team air yards after 7 weeks of the season.
Cole Beasley did find the end zone, but I don't want people to chase this touchdown. He was second in team targets with 6, but when you're averaging 5.3 yards per reception, you ain't it.
By the way, you know, it's 16 yards. Cool.
Right. I'm glad you saved somebody's day with it. But also, that's a PPR play, and the guy caught 3 balls, so not enough.
No, definitely not enough. Not a guy you should be chasing. Like, this was only, I think we had the question this morning, what was it, Terry McLaurin or Cole Beasley? And it's like, go with Cole Beasley. And it's like, yeah, he scored a touchdown, but whoop-de-doo. Like, I'm not.
I also find it interesting in this receiving core. Like, I was waiting to see if Robert Foster would pop at all now that Zay Jones was traded to Oakland, and he didn't draw a single target. But he is a field stretcher. He excelled a lot last season, really showed out towards the end of the year. So, again, like...
It's weird, right? This whole situation with him is weird.
He was hurt a lot, and so he was trying to come back from those injuries. Again, like, that is a player that I wouldn't be surprised pops. Don't stash him. Just keep the name in the back of your brain, because he is a player that I can imagine popping around like week 14 if Smokey were to get injured, and he'd be that downfield option.
That's a good call if Brown, fingers crossed, no injury issues. But
he's certainly had those in the past.
And was on the injury report with their groin this week, too.
Yep.
I want to hit this start-sit question we have in the chat, and then come to a little more of a wide view question that I have. Ryan from Twitter asks us, Alshon Jeffrey or James White for flex? I mean, I got to go with Jeffrey in this spot.
Because of the touchdown potential?
The touchdown potential. I do like this game to be pretty high scoring. Dallas's cornerbacks are pretty good. But Jeffrey's really the only... You mentioned this on FFL this morning, like we talked about on the podcast too. This wide receiver core is kind of dust right now beyond him. And the tight ends.
Rex Burkhead is going to play?
No, he's not.
He's not playing. Okay.
He's out. So White is appealing, but it really just is, what do you think of this game in terms of what's going to happen with the Jets? I
don't imagine them playing from behind, and White is usually more utilized when playing from behind. Maybe he sees a little bit more action with Edelman struggling through that chest/rib injury, but I think, again, your point of if there is a wide receiver in Philadelphia, and we expect this game to have a bit of a ping-pong appeal that's going to convert it in the red area of the field, it's going to be Alshon.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, James asked us on Facebook, and I want to kind of, the answer to this one is obvious, but should Chase Edmonds be rostered in all leagues? Yes.
No.
I think
Of course.
so. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm being facetious.
I was like, whoa, wait. I thought that was a layup. What are we talking about?
Yeah,
I mean, he should be rostered in all leagues, but I was texting with a friend about this before the show, and just they felt really strongly about this, considering how much of the NFL popularity comes from fantasy football. He was making the argument that, like, the teams deserve, like, they owe it to us to be more transparent. We've even got someone in the chat, Cliff Kingsbury needs to pay for his sin. Do you I was telling him, like, they will never feel the squeeze to do that. Like, They don't. It obviously, a lot of the revenue, sure, comes from fantasy. A lot of the popularity comes from fantasy. A lot of the way the audience is engaged comes from fantasy. But at the end of the day, these guys are trying to win their league.
Yeah,
not win your stupid fantasy league, win the actual Super Bowl.
This is why on most receipts, there's, after you pay for something like at a restaurant, there's like a tip recommendation, because you got to tell folks, no, you need to tip this person 20%. It's the same mentality. You ain't going to stop playing fantasy football. You're not going to be like, you know what, I'm out, and you're going to affect this team or players' popularity, and now there's no motivation for the coaches to be. No one's going to thank you for being cool with them until they feel, like Matt said, the squeeze against it. So we just don't live in that world. I try to kill them with kindness, but not everybody does.
No, you're dead on about that. I mean, that's you're right. That's a great way to put it. Is the tip analogy, like, hey, don't forget, you got to do us a little extra here, because there's no, like I said, there's no squeeze.
There's no impetus for teams to do it.
It's the same way, like, people are out there chirping about the refs every week, and I get it. The officiating has some problems.
You're not going to stop watching football.
So what's the incentive to change? It's a very dark, nihilistic way to look at it. But look, this is corporate America, baby.
Hope is poison.
Hope is poison. This is all a corporation. What else do you think is happening? I don't know. I thought that was something that we should talk about.
Shout out to Atala Amjad for coming a couple of weeks in a row now to our halftime. We appreciate you. See, we are thanking you even though you didn't expect it, because we are different than, the norm that we just, railed against.
Yeah, the norm that we just railed against. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's right. This is a show about you, the people, and we are here for you, the people. And speaking of which, I do want to hit this one last question before we get out of here. Atala asks us, thank you for being on the show. Now let's answer your question. Who to pick up off waivers who's currently on bye this week? I want to see if there's anyone from these teams that kind of stands out to you. Because this is a good talk about a Wolf move. You can go and add him, before all that. That like people are looking at everyone that's played this week. But how about this week? How about next week? Panthers, Browns, Steelers, Bucks. I think here's a sneaky move. Little conspiracy. I don't think O.J. Howard is getting moved, but on the off chance that he gets traded at the deadline, there's no incentive for him to that really want to be there. If they can pick, they're not using him in that offense. Like Bruce Arians is not going anywhere, I don't think, for the next couple of years. Byron Leftwich is not going anywhere for the next couple of years. What if they try to move him
Arians might go someplace and hand the reins over to Leftwich.
Sure, or to Todd Bowles.
Sure.
Either way, this infrastructure looks like it's in place, right? If O.J. Howard gets moved at the deadline, the Seahawks just lost Will Dissly. They're clearly in a Super Bowl push. Rap Sheet has already said that they're going to be out there looking at the trade deadline.
Jared Cook isn't healthy, and the team elevated Dan Arnold. Yes, he's a converted wide receiver at the behest of Sean Payton, but Dan Arnold ain't it for another team that's desperate for a Super Bowl window and has a quarterback with a hand issue and might need a little bit of a security blanket. So I think this is a really interesting point. I might also, I love a Snell nug.
Yes, this is where I thought you were going to go with this. So
I already stashed him through the bye.
Look, as much as I've wanted to rail
6-0.
Rail against your humble brag, but rail against your Benny Snell love for whatever reason that he's your guy, the slug of a running back, Benny Snell. But I've long said that running back talent, not that big of a deal. What really does matter is just opportunity. And I mean, a good situation would be nice, but this is a nice offensive line in Pittsburgh. James Conner, not the most durable guy in the world. I think Snell is more likely to take over
that Sunday night game against the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, it helps that the Chargers can't tackle anyone, but
I mean, fair.
Yeah. Well, that is all we have for you, the people, today, Liz. All we have for everyone. Brandon Lane in the chat did want to give you a shout out. Happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you.
It's very exciting, Liz.
Appreciate that.
Happy belated birthday. People, good luck in your little fantasy teams that we've already told you are just a nihilistic wasteland because the teams don't care because they're not.
But we care. We care. Let's please end on a solid note. Be sure to check back here. Check out the podcast. We'll be digesting all of this. Matt has pickups. We've got fearless forecasts. We're going to roll forward to week 8. That's the halfway point. Thanks for sticking with us.
Mercifully, we're to the halfway point, as Liz said at the start of the show. But yes, we subscribe to the podcast. We're going to take all this and spin it positive in just a few hours. And we will see you all right back here next week.